This is going to be really difficult because my daughter died on the 22nd of June last year.
I'm sorry.
And she had a horrendous time in hospital, but she was in ITU for 3 months, and they brought her down to the ward. She had 2 tracheotomies, so all she was allowed to eat was yoghurt at that time until the dietitian was to see her.
Yeah.
She never really saw a dietitian on the ward, just once. The food that they offered her, I kept on telling them she cannot eat hot, solid food. It had to be soft food, yoghurts or soups. Every time the food choice came round, it was sandwiches or meats, and her narrow in the airway, she couldn't swallow properly. So I was told to go down to Marks and Spencer's, which was in the hospital, to go and get the food, and I was running around doing that all the time.
What would have happened if you hadn't been there?
It was horrendous. And
if you hadn't been there, what would have happened?
Well, I wasn't there at one time, and she ended up having the first night coming back from ITU. They gave her an overdose of insulin, so therefore after that they put her onto another ward in a little private room, and I slept there 24 hours. I was there 24 hours a day. I didn't leave her because she was doubly incontinent. I had to change her and do her. And I didn't mind.
No,
I don't mind cleaning up. But when it comes to food, the dietitian, she had a double tracheotomy and her narrowing. She couldn't breathe properly. So somebody should have come in and ensured she had the right food to eat. She was supposed to get probiotic yogurts to help the healing and her stomach. They didn't have it. I had to go out and buy it.
Do you think there was anyone in the hospital who's... I mean, it sounds to me, and yours is obviously a terribly extreme example, but it sounds to me as if there simply aren't people in the posts that would bear responsibility for what you and other less serious calls have described. The posts don't seem to exist.
The people who were handing out the food and menus got very angry with me because they said, well, we haven't got it, go to the next ward. So I went into the next ward and said, is there any leftover soup?
This is what I
mean.
And
they said no. So then I ended up going down to hospital. I was the mother from hell, and I was very polite to everybody, considering what happened to cause my daughter to be moved to a different ward. And they actually tried to discharge her 2 weeks earlier than they should have. And in the end, she died. She died at home from choking. So
I'm so sorry for you.
It's coming up to a year now.
I know.
And I wish Jeremy Hunt or anybody else that deals with the NHS speak to the public, somebody like myself, because if I went into hospital for an operation, I was fairly healthy, no matter what food was put in front of me, I'd be grateful. But when you've got special needs, when you can't eat certain foods and there isn't that choice on the menu, or the dietitian comes to tell the staff that this patient cannot swallow, or if she does swallow large lumps of food, it could get caught in her throat.
And that I think the point I'm trying to make is that it was nobody's responsibility. It's as if whether it's cuts or whatever the reason might be, it's as if the person who would have been in charge of what you're describing doesn't exist anymore.
They don't, because the staff are running around, and if there's any leftover food, they try and give it to other patients that's been sitting there, or patients that are coming in, which obviously is a health hazard, especially if you've got an infection in the throat. It's tracheotomy. You probably are aware, the first tracheotomy, they took it out and then they had to squeeze it back in, and it was so small, so they had to put a child's tracheotomy into her throat. So it was healing very badly, shall I say.
Yes. And
it was, because of infection, she was prone, so she couldn't have hot food, she couldn't have cottage pie. There was no, even if it was soup, there was no soup on the menu. There was no, the yoghurts. I had to go and fight for a yoghurt.
And if you
in the end, I went down to Marks and Spencer's and I provided all the food, which, to save my daughter's life, I was more than happy.
Of course you were, but there will be some people who wouldn't have been able to do that because...
I wouldn't. I spent went into overdraft for about 7. I mean, I was living in the hospital myself. They wouldn't even offer me a cup of tea. I mean, I don't care. That isn't the point. I mean, I was a single parent, hardworking, struggling. I bought it on my credit card, on my debit card. I went overdrawn. You don't think at that time you can't afford it. You just, if somebody needs something, you do whatever to go and get it. So, I was going down to Marks and Spencer's, as they said, to get the soups there and asking them to heat it up in Marks's, because there's Marks and Spencer's in the hospital, so I didn't have to leave go out in the street. But
of course.
It's as I say, if you're in for, you had your appendix out or something like that, you're in there, you accept it, you accept the cuts, you accept what you're given, the sandwiches, they're lying around. I've seen them lying around.
Yeah, everyone
they could be 2 or 3 days old. But
and again, no one knows whose job it is to check.
Well, no, there isn't. The poor staff. I was like, oh, she's complaining again. I wasn't complaining. I just trying to get food for my daughter.
Oh, I know.
So, and they need to be proper people, separated from the nursing staff handing out the food as well. And the people that were handing out the food, they just said, well, take it or leave it, really. Some of the catering staff.
No, I understand
that were there because they were rushed.
But
and
also, if they spend 3 minutes dealing with one patient, they don't meet their targets or they don't tick their boxes for their rounds, and they get into trouble from their managers. The mess is next level, but your experience puts everybody else's into the shade.
But the thing is, you're handing food to a patient that could kill them.
Yeah.
Because my daughter had learning difficulties, so they were very rude to her at some times. Well, you've got to pick something off the menu, so she ended up picking something, and I took it away, saying, "Roxana, you can't eat it." She goes, "Well, I'll go hungry otherwise."
No. I'm so sorry.
So the politicians need to speak to people like myself and other people that have gone through several experiences that rely on.
I hate to say this.
Food.
I hate to say this, but they can't afford to. I think the ones that have got a conscience, and I don't know.
Politician to speak to myself, or
no, they can't afford. They can't, because if they speak to you, then everything they stand for is rendered disgusting and despicable. You know that the people who are going to choose the next Prime Minister, the Conservative Party members, 61% of them consider significant damage to the UK economy to be a price worth paying for whatever they think Brexit is going to be. So we look at the financial situations that we're currently in. 61% of the people choosing our next Prime Minister think that making things economically worse is desirable.
Well, I think they should look at third world funding, as Esther McVeigh said, and put it into the hospitals, because I'm telling you...
Oh, sweetheart, Esther McVeigh talks utter gibberish, and she's made you think that somehow...
Oh, no, I'm not choosing any particular politician, but
foreign aid doesn't make the tiniest difference to this. It's the most evil politicians that stand up and make grieving mothers like you think that things might have gone differently for your daughter if we weren't helping those mysterious foreigners over there.
But it's not only that. I mean, it started...
It's taxes from the people that own the newspapers that are championing the candidates that are ignoring your daughter. That's where the money needs to come from.
Well, in ITU, she had fabulous... it would have cost £1,500 a day to look after my daughter for 3 months in that hospital. As soon as she went onto the ward, it was third world. She didn't... There was her bags of medicine, had a sack full of medicine left on the floor. I had to take it to the nurse and said, if you don't take that, I will report it to security. It's medication.
And they won't do it until the point comes when they have to. Heather, my heart breaks, and every now and then something happens at work, and I don't know what to do, and I don't know what to say, except I am so sorry for you and for your loss. I really am.